At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. In the end, what's HFY without humanity? My name's Carol. Let's begin. The dust tasted different on Tribute Day. Bitter, as if the wind carried the day's coming dread. Kaya Falk noticed these things. The way the wind shifted before a storm, how her plasma cutter's hum changed pitch when the coils needed cleaning. The exact moment her daughter's footsteps changed from a skip to something more careful. Today, as she walked with 8-year-old Rhea through the settlement's main square, every instinct she'd buried for a decade screamed warnings. The Votan patrol arrived 3 hours early. "Mom, why aren't they here already?" Rhea's small hand tightened in hers. "Don't know, sweetheart. Keep walking." Around them, the other colonists of Falk's stand performed the familiar dance of submission. Eyes down, shoulders hunched, creating wide berths around the slate-gray forms of their occupiers. A generation of practice had taught them the choreography. Don't look, don't speak unless spoken to, don't exist too loudly. The patrol consisted of 9 soldiers in their characteristic bronze-plated armor, energy rifles held with the casual arrogance of those who'd never faced real resistance. At their center walked Warlord Dracker himself, 2.5 meters of muscle and scales, his ceremonial axe strapped across his broad back. The weapon was purely symbolic. No one on Falk's stand would dare challenge him to the ritual combat it represented. Kaya's workshop stood at the square's edge, its corrugated metal doors thrown open to catch the morning breeze. She could make it there in about 30 seconds if she walked normally. 20 if she didn't care about drawing attention. "Salsa chips!" Rhea's attention snapped to old Olin's vendor stall, where vacuum-sealed packets of protein crisps hung like bright jewels. "Mom, can I?" "After the patrol passes." But Rhea pulled away, that 8-year-old certainty that the universe would bend around her. She darted between 2 colonists, her worn sneakers kicking up small clouds of red dust. The Votan soldier never saw her. The collision was nothing. Rhea's 40 pounds against the soldier's 200. She bounced off his armored thigh like a rubber ball, stumbling but keeping her feet. The soldier, a young one by the lack of kill marks on his shoulder guards, spun with surprising speed. "Vermin!" he hissed in accented standard, the word dripping with the contempt the Votan reserved for anything smaller than themselves. "Watch where you crawl." Rhea straightened, rubbing her shoulder. She looked up at him with those striking blue eyes that had somehow survived both her parents' brown ones, curious rather than frightened. "Sorry, mister. I didn't see—" The backhand caught her across the left cheek. The crack echoed across the square. Rhea flew backward, her small body hitting the packed earth hard, enough to raise dust. She made a sound, not quite a scream, more like the surprised yelp of an animal that didn't understand what had happened. Time crystallized. Every human in the square froze. Olin dropped a packet of crisps, the foil crinkling as it hit the ground. A woman pulled her own children closer. Someone whispered a prayer in Mandarin. The soldier laughed, a series of clicks and whistles that passed for mirth among his kind. He turned to his squad mates, his tail swishing with satisfaction. "See how they scatter when—" He stopped mid-sentence. Kaya Falk stood exactly where she'd been a moment before, but something fundamental had changed. Her expression hadn't shifted. It had ceased to exist. Her face became a blank canvas, smooth and terrible in its emptiness, the kind of expression that preceded an extinction event. She took 3 steps forward, scooped Rhea into her arms with a swift, fluid motion, and handed her to Olin without looking at him. "Take her to Brahm. Now." Olin, who'd survived 40 years under Votan rule by knowing when to avoid questions, took the crying child and ran. Kaya turned and walked toward her workshop. She moved at a deliberate pace, each step measured, the gait of someone who had already made every decision that mattered. Behind her, the soldiers' laughter resumed, louder now. "Look at the mother thing run! Perhaps I should teach the whole litter proper The workshop door closed behind her with a soft click. Inside, Kaya moved through the darkness, her muscles remembering the path. Her hands found the false panel without conscious thought. Third rivet from the left, push in, and twist. The hidden compartment, lined with smuggled scan-dampening alloys, opened with a whisper of well-oiled hinges. The Mark IV Wraith combat frame hung in its cradle like a sleeping predator, skeletal and black. It weighed less than 30 kilos fully loaded. No armor to speak of. The Wraith series had been designed for a different kind of warfare. Speed over strength, where if you got hit, you'd already failed. She stripped to her undersuit in 11 seconds. The frame's interface pads pressed against her spine, microfilaments extending to connect with her nervous system. 7 years since she'd worn it, but the connection felt like coming home. Servos hummed to life, drinking deep from the microfusion cell Leon had smuggled in piece by piece, hidden in mining equipment manifests and water purifier shipments. The high-frequency blade hung in its own bracket, 20 inches of molecular death. The edge vibrated at 30,000 cycles per second when activated, able to part molecular bonds rather than cut them. She'd named it diplomacy, once upon a time, when she still thought jokes about violence were funny. Total time in the workshop, 1 minute, 43 seconds. She exited through the back, into the maze of alleys that connected the settlement's industrial quarter. The frame's footfalls made no sound. Reactive dampeners in the soles absorbed and redistributed the impact. Her breathing synchronized with the suit's rhythm, that old combat meditation falling over her like a shroud. The laughing soldier was still regaling his squad with his moment of triumph when she emerged from the shadows between two storage units, 8 meters behind him. The first cut took his head at the jaw joint, where helmet met neck seal. The high-frequency blade passed through scale and bone like morning mist. His body took 3 seconds to realize it was dead, hydraulic blood pressure keeping him standing even as his head rolled away. The second soldier, faster than his dead companion, managed a quarter turn before diplomacy found the gap beneath his arm, sliding between the plates to bisect both hearts. Votan anatomy clustered their vital organs around fat for protection, but a single, perfectly placed strike could end them instantly. The third brought his rifle up, finger finding the trigger. A bolt of plasma seared the air millimeters from her shoulder as she flowed under the barrel, the frame's enhanced muscles launching her in a flat spin that brought the blade across his ankles. He toppled forward, and she rose behind him, driving the sword down through the back of his skull. 15 seconds. 3 dead. The remaining soldiers scattered, their training taking over, as they sought cover and overlapping fields of fire. They were veterans of a dozen campaigns. Kaya moved through them in a terrible dance, the wraith frame turning her into something between human and missile. She bounced off walls, used their own bodies as springboards, and never stayed still long enough for their targeting systems to lock. The blade sang its ultrasonic death song, finding every weakness their armor possessed. Joints, neck seals, the soft spot where their tails met their spines. 6 minutes, 19 seconds. 6 more soldiers reduced to cooling meat. Warlord Dracker stood alone in the square center, his ceremonial axe now gripped in both massive hands. The weapon's energy field crackled to life, casting purple shadows across his bronze scales. He was magnificent in his rage. 2.5 meters of evolved predator, product of 100,000 years of natural selection, favoring strength and savagery.
Female, he rumbled. You have killed warriors of the hegemony. For this, you will die slowly. But first, you will watch me eat your spawns.
She moved before he could finish. The Wraith Frame's full sprint hit 43 miles per hour in 1.3 seconds. Drakkar swung his axe in a devastating horizontal arc that would have cut an unarmored human in half. Kaya dropped to her knees, her momentum carrying her in a slide beneath the blade. Sparks flew as the frame's knee guards scraped against stone. She came up inside his reach, diplomacy already moving. The first cut severed the tendons in his right arm. The axe clattered away. The second opened his throat from ear to ear, or what passed for ears on a Votan. The third, delivered as he knelt, took his head cleanly at the shoulders. She caught it before it hit the ground. 8 minutes, 50 seconds since Rhea had been struck. The Citadel squatted at the square's far end, a brutal edifice of imported black stone that had once been the governor's residence. When Leon had worked there, the building had hosted diplomatic dinners and colony celebrations. Now it housed the Votan command structure, its windows narrow slits, more suited to defense than democracy. 2 sentries flanked the main entrance, their rifles already raised. They'd heard the sounds of combat, seen their warlord fall. Their training demanded they hold the door. Kaya kept her pace. The first sentry fired, his plasma bolt searing the air where she'd been a heartbeat before. The frame's lateral thrust carried her up the wall itself, defying gravity for 3 steps before she pushed off, spinning. Her knee caught him in the throat, crushing his windpipe. She landed, rolled, and came up moving as the second guard tried to track her. Diplomacy's pommel struck the soft spot behind his knee, dropping him. A second blow to the base of his skull ensured he wouldn't get back up. She left them unconscious. They would live, witnesses to what came next. The council chamber doors were carved ironwood. She kicked them open hard enough to crack the frame. Inside, 5 Votan officers sat around a massive table, their meeting interrupted. Maps of the settlement covered the surface, marked with tribute collection routes and population density estimates. At the table's far end, in a high-backed chair that had once belonged to Governor Leon Falk, sat Commander Hesh. Where Drakkar was all brute force, Hesh was more dangerous. Lean for a Votan, with scales that ran black and gray in patterns that never quite repeated. His eyes held intelligence rather than mere cunning, the kinds that understood violence as a tool rather than a solution. The officers surged to their feet, hands moving to sidearms. Hesh raised one clawed hand, and they froze. Kaya walked the length of the table, leaving red footprints on the imported carpet. She'd stepped in something during the fight. She didn't care to know what. At the head of the table, she unslung the canvas sack from her shoulder and upended it over Drakkar's chair. The warlord's head rolled out, his expression frozen in that last moment of disbelief. Without ceremony, she drove diplomacy through his jaw, angling the blade to pierce the wood of the chair's high back. The head hung there, pinned like an animal trophy, dead eyes staring at his former subordinates. The room erupted. 3 officers rushed her at once, honor demanding they answer this insult with blood. Hesh's voice cracked like a whip. Hold. They stopped mid-stride, confusion and rage warring on their scaled faces. A rabble's brawl brings no honor, Hesh continued, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone who chose each word like a weapon. His was a warrior's death, and ours must be a warrior's vengeance, cold and deliberate. His jet-black eyes locked with Kaya's, a flicker of appraisal, the acknowledgement of one predator for another, crossed his features. She turned and walked out, leaving diplomacy where it stood, still humming its ultrasonic song through a dead warlord's skull. 10 minutes, 27 seconds. Brom Yeager's office occupied the back half of what had been the settlement's police station, back when Falk's Stand had needed actual police instead of Votan-approved peace facilitators. Now, it served mostly as a place for humans to register complaints that would never be addressed, and file reports that would never be read. Brom sat behind his desk, Rhea on his lap, pressing a cold compress to her cheek. The bruise had already darkened to purple, spreading across her small face like spilled ink. She'd stopped crying, but tears still tracked through the dust on her cheeks. "It's okay, little one," Brom murmured, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. "Your mom will be here soon." Olin had told him what happened. 10 minutes ago, Kaya had handed over her daughter and walked into her workshop. Since then, the square had echoed with sounds that Brom, former colonial marine, recognized too well. The sharp crack of hypervelocity weapons, the distinctive hum of energy fields. Then silence. "Deputy Yeager?" Rhea's voice was small. "Is Mommy in trouble?" Before he could answer, the door opened. Kaya stood in the doorway, still wearing the black undersuit that interfaced with combat frames. Violet-black Votan blood splattered her arms and face. Her expression remained, that terrible blank, like looking into an event horizon. Then she saw Rhea, and everything changed. The mask shattered. Her face crumpled with a love so fierce it could have melted steel. She crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered her daughter into her arms, careful of the bruised cheek. "Baby," she whispered. "My baby. I'm here." "Mommy, you're messy." "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry." Brom stood slowly, his hand instinctively moving to the sidearm he wasn't allowed to carry anymore. "Kaya, what did you do?" She looked at him over Rhea's head, and he saw it all in her eyes. The death. The decision. The line that, once crossed, could never be uncrossed. "What I had to." In the council chamber, Hesh studied the head mounted to his former commander's chair with the detached interest of a scientist examining a specimen. Around him, his surviving officers raged and postured, demanding immediate retaliation. "We have 300 warriors in orbit," growled Captain Thekvar, Drakker's clutch brother and most loyal supporter. "One transmission and we can scour this entire settlement from the planet's surface." "And violate the Vila Accord's orbital bombardment clause?" Hesh didn't look away from Drakker's dead eyes. "That would trigger automatic state of war with Earth. Their fleet may be 40 light years away, but their reaction would be comprehensive." "Then we go door to door, execute 10 humans for every warrior lost." "With what authority?" Hesh finally turned, his black eyes reflecting the chamber's harsh lights. "Our warlord is dead. By law, command falls to me. I will expend my warriors on strategic objectives, and emotional satisfaction is a poor one." Thekvar's hand moved to his sidearm. "You dare! Disrespect!" Hesh moved faster than thought. His hand closed around Thekvar's throat, lifting the larger Votan off the ground with deceptive strength. "I dare. Exactly what needs daring. Drakker's arrogance got him killed by a single human female. Would you follow him into that dishonor?" He released Thekvar, who collapsed, gasping. The other officers stepped back, recognizing the shift in power. "Galt." Hesh addressed the youngest soldier present, barely past his first molting. "Retrieve the warlord's body from the square. Show proper honors. Touch nothing else." The young soldier saluted and fled, grateful to escape the tension. Hesh pulled diplomacy from the chair with a wet sound, studying the blade's construction. The technology was straightforward. High-frequency oscillation, molecular disruption. Nothing the hegemony couldn't replicate. But the way it had been wielded...
"Sir," ventured another officer. "Your orders?" "Lock down," Hesh replied without hesitation. "Seal the settlement's perimeter. Curfew at sunset. Anyone on the streets after dark will be shot." He paused, considering. "And broadcast a message. The female has 24 hours to surrender herself. If she refuses, we begin restricting resources. Water first, then power."
"That's all?" Hesh smiled, an expression that would have given a human child nightmares.
"Draka ruled through fear. Fear is brittle. It shatters under sufficient pressure. We just witnessed the results."
He set the blade on the table with deliberate care.
"I prefer leverage. The humans will hand her over themselves when their children start crying from thirst."
The cantina had never been so packed. Every adult who could slip away from Votan oversight had crammed into the low-ceilinged space that still smelled of fermented grain from its previous life as a distillery. Conversations died as Brahm entered, Kaya beside him. She'd washed the blood away and changed into clean work clothes, but everyone knew what she'd done. The story had spread through the settlement's hidden communication networks, old fiber optic lines the Votan didn't know about, runner children who could slip through sewage pipes, coded messages and routine work orders.
"You killed them all!"
The accusation came from Hendricks, who ran the water treatment plant. His face had gone pale beneath his radiation tan.
8 Votan soldiers, and the Warlord himself! Do you have any idea what you've brought down on us?
"They struck my daughter." Kaya's voice carried no emotion, which somehow made it worse.
"Children get hit every day."
Hendricks stood, his chair scraping against concrete.
"My boy took a rifle butt to the skull last month for walking too slowly. Did I start a war over it? No, because I'm not selfish enough to..." "Finish that sentence."
Brahm stepped forward, hand resting on his empty holster out of habit.
"Go ahead, Hendricks. Tell us all how selfish she is for not letting them beat her 8-year-old daughter." "That is not what I..."
"That's exactly what you meant." This from Sarah McCain, the settlement's doctor. "We've been rationalizing brutality for so long, we've forgotten what's normal. They struck a child. And for once, someone struck back."
"And we'll all pay for it now."
Hendricks' fear transformed into anger.
"They'll cut our water, our power. People will die." "People are already dying,"
Olin said quietly from his corner table.
"Slowly, maybe, but dying all the same. At least now we're dying for something."
The room erupted into arguments. Voices rose, factions formed. Those with children understood Kaya's choice. Those without saw only the consequences. Brahm watched it all, remembering similar arguments from his Marine days. The paralysis that came before accepting that violence, once begun, had its own momentum.
"We should hand her over."
The words cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone turned to stare at Councilman Reeves, the closest thing the settlement had to a legitimate human leadership under the Votan rule. He sat at the bar, not meeting anyone's eyes.
"It's logical,"
he continued, each word careful and horrible.
"One life to save thousands, and if needed..."
He paused, gathering courage for the unthinkable.
The child, too. Show them we're completely submitted. That this was an aberration.
After his words, the cantina's low hum ceased. The only sound was the drip of condensation from a pipe. Every colonist seemed frozen, staring at the floor, at the walls, anywhere but at each other. Kaya didn't move, didn't speak, but something in her stillness made everyone step back. Brahm found his voice first.
Did you just suggest we hand over an 8-year-old to be executed? I'm suggesting we survive, Reeves replied, but his voice shook. The Votan respect strength, but they respect submission more. If we show them we're willing to sacrifice our own. The sound of Brahm's fist connecting with Reeves' jaw was oddly satisfying. The councilman tumbled off his bar stool, blood streaming from his nose. Hendricks, who had been shouting about selfishness moments before, stared at the fallen councilman, then at Kaya, then at his own trembling hands. The fear on his face was replaced by a dawning disgust. Not for Kaya, but for the man he saw reflected in the bar's grimy mirror. For the compromises they had all made. Anyone else want to suggest murdering children? Brahm shook out his hand, knuckles already swelling. No? Good. Then let's talk about what we're actually going to do.
Fight, Kaya said, her first word since entering. We fight.
With what? Someone called out. Mining lasers and rock hammers?
With knowledge. She moved to the center of the room, and Brahm saw her transform. The broken mother vanished, replaced by the commander she'd been before Rhea existed. The Votan have superior weapons, superior numbers, superior position. But they have weaknesses. I'm going to teach you to exploit them.
You're gonna get us all killed, a voice muttered from the back.
Maybe, Kaya agreed. But I'd rather die standing than kneel in bondage. She looked around the room, her gaze finally landing on Hendricks. He met her stare, straightened his shoulders, and gave a single, sharp nod. The debate was over. Galt had seen death before. The hegemony's expansion left little room for soldiers who hadn't, but he'd never seen death like this. The square looked like an abattoir. His fellow soldiers lay where they'd fallen, their positioning telling the story of those final moments. No defensive circle, no organized retreat. They'd been hunted, picked off one by something that moved too fast for warriors trained since hatching. Warlord Drakker's body lay in the center, his head cleanly removed. Galt had served under commanders who died in glorious battle, overwhelmed by superior numbers or brought low by clever strategy. This was an execution. He loaded the warlord's remains onto a hover sled with proper ceremony, arranging the severed head to appear dignified. As he worked, he noticed details his superiors might miss. The clean cuts, the minimal blood spatter suggesting instant death, the small handprint in the dust where a human child had fallen. One child hurt, 8 warriors dead. The equation felt wrong. In the hegemony's philosophy, strength determined worth. The strong ruled the weak because nature itself demanded it. But if one human could do this, a female no less, smaller and lighter than any Votan, then what did it say about their strength? Galt activated the hover sled and began the journey back to the Citadel, his mind churning with questions that felt like blasphemy. He thought of his own clutch siblings back home, young and proud, preparing for their first campaigns. What would he tell them about today? That humans were weak? That the hegemony's strength was absolute? Or would he tell them the truth? That he'd seen fear in a warlord's dead eyes? Night fell on Falk's Stand like a held breath. The settlement streets, usually quiet after dark, had become tomb silent. Votan patrols moved in groups of 6 now, weapons drawn, watching windows and rooftops with new wariness. In the mining tunnels beneath Kaya's workshop, 43 humans gathered in the harsh light of industrial floods. They were mechanics and farmers, water technicians and teachers. The youngest was 19, the oldest pushing 70. A few, like Brahm, were former military. Others had backgrounds in off-world demolitions or frontier security. None of them were soldiers now. The Votan have 39 major organs, Kaya explained, projecting a hologram from a salvaged medical scanner. But only 6 are immediately fatal if damaged. Here, here, and here. She pointed to locations on the 3-dimensional image. Their scales are thickest along the spine and chest, weakest at the joints, under the arms, and where the tail meets the body. She moved through the lesson with a clinician's detachment, how to convert mining charges into shaped explosives, where to strike to disable rather than kill, preserving ammunition, how to move in small teams, overlapping coverage. Hendrix, she called out. Your experience with asteroid fracturing means you're on demolitions. You lead that team. Hendrix, looking grim but resolute, nodded.
Why disable? Asked Tom Park, whose daughter attended school with Rhea. If we're fighting, shouldn't we?
Because dead martyrs inspire revenge. Wounded soldiers require resources. Kaya picked up a plasma cutter, demonstrating how to modify its focus. 3 wounded Votan need evacuation, medical care, food, water. They become a drain instead of an asset. You've covered this before, Sarah McCain observed. Kaya met her eyes. I've thought about it. Every day for 10 years. What I'd do if they came for her. She set down the cutter. I hoped I'd never need to know. Brahm watched from the tunnel entrance, standing guard, but also observing how quickly his neighbors transformed. An hour ago, they'd been victims. Now, piece by piece, Kaya was showing them they could be something else. Not soldiers that would take months they didn't have. But dangerous. That only took will. Tomorrow, Hesh will make his move, Kaya continued. He's smarter than Drakkar. He'll probe our defenses, test our resolve. He wants to know if I'm alone, or if the settlement is with me.
What do you think he'll do? Brahm asked.
Cut our resources. Water first, it's essential and centralized. He'll send a force to secure the main well, maybe destroy the backup pumps. Meanwhile, he'll hit something else. Divide our response. The communications tower, probably. Cut us off from any possibility of calling Earth. Not that it would have done us much good this far out.
So, we defend both?
We defend both. She looked around the room, meeting each person's eyes. Some of you will die tomorrow. I won't lie about that. But if we break, if we show weakness, they'll never stop. Your children will grow up the way you have. Afraid, diminished, less than human. She paused. Or we can show them that humans have teeth. What about after? A woman who ran the hydroponics farm spoke up. Say we win tomorrow. They have warriors in orbit, ships, weapons we can't match. One battle at a time, Kaya replied. But Hesh is pragmatic. If holding Falk's Stand costs more than it profits, he'll find a reason to leave. We just have to make sure that cost is clear. In her small apartment above the clinic, Sarah McCain tucked her twin boys into bed. They were 6, born under occupation, knowing no world where humans walked without fear. They'd learned to be quiet before they'd learned to read, understanding instinctively that visibility meant danger. "Mom," Will whispered. "Miss Falk killed the bad aliens, didn't she?" Sarah smoothed back his hair. "Where did you hear that?" "Everyone's talking about it. They say she's gonna fight all of them." His brother Jin sat up, his expression bright with something Sarah had never seen before. "Can we help? We could—" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. "You stay hidden. Stay safe. Promise me." They promised, but she saw the reluctance in their eyes. 10 hours ago, they'd been resigned to their fate. Now, Kaya had shown them another possibility, and Sarah didn't know whether to thank her or curse her for it. After the boys fell asleep, she returned to the clinic's lower level where she'd been preparing supplies. Bandages, sutures, plasma bags, the tools for keeping humans alive through violence. On the table lay something else. Her grandfather's combat knife, brought from Earth when he migrated 60 years ago. She'd never thought she'd need it for its intended purpose. Tomorrow, she would find out if her medical oath to do no harm had exceptions. Kaya stood in Ria's room, watching her daughter sleep. The bruise had darkened further, purple spreading into green and yellow at the edges. It would heal in a week, maybe 2. The memory of it would last forever. She heard Brahm approach. He'd learned to walk quietly in the Marines, but the Wraith frame had taught her to hear everything. "Can't sleep either?" he asked softly. "Sleep is for people who haven't painted targets on their children." "That's not. It is, though." She turned from the bed, moving to the window where she could watch the street below. "I could have endured it. I could have taken Ria and run, hidden, found another way. Instead, I chose this." "You chose to stop them from hitting your daughter again. Ever." "And if she dies because of that choice?" Brahm joined her at the window. Below, a Votan patrol moved past, their lights sweeping the empty street. "Then she dies free. That's more than the rest of us have managed in 20 years. They stood in comfortable silence, 2 parents who'd chosen violence to protect what they loved. Finally, Brahm spoke again. "Tell me about the frame. The real story, not the cover Leon sold everyone." Kaya almost smiled. "Earth Military Coalition, 9th Orbital Assault Division, Operation Stillwater." Brahm whistled low. "The Kraken Nebula incident. That was you?" "Part of it. We were supposed to be a myth. Drop from orbit, complete the mission before anyone knew we were there, extract without a trace. Ghosts with molecular blades." "What happened?" "I got pregnant." She touched the window, her reflection overlapping with Ria's sleeping form. "Suddenly, ending lives meant something different. Every enemy soldier had a mother, possibly children. I couldn't separate the job from what was growing inside me." "So you retired?" "Retired sounds voluntary. I ran. Changed my name, found the furthest colony from Earth's military reach. I met Leon, who somehow saw through everything and loved me anyway." Her voice caught slightly. "I thought I could bury that person. Turns out she was just sleeping." "Good thing, too. We'd all be dead tomorrow without her." "We still might be." "Maybe." Brahm turned to leave, then paused. "But we'll die trying to live." After he left, Kaya returned to Ria's bedside. Her daughter had kicked off her blankets, as always. Kaya tucked them back, kissed the unbruised cheek, and whispered words her daughter couldn't hear. "I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry for what I was, what I am, what I have to be again. But I promise you this, they will never touch you again. Not while I breathe." Dawn came, gray and cold, unusual for Falkstand's binary sunrise. Hesh stood in the Citadel's command center, watching feeds from surveillance drones. The settlement looked normal, humans moving about their morning routines, preparing for another day of occupation. But details betrayed the truth. Groups walked together, rather than alone. Windows that usually stood open were shuttered, and in the market square, where yesterday's violence had painted the stones with Votan blood, someone had erected a small memorial of desert flowers. The flowers were bloodroot, which bloomed only after fires. "Commander," Galt reported, still shaken from his retrieval duty. "The deadline approaches." "And the female hasn't surrendered." Hesh had expected this. Hoped for it, even. A voluntary surrender would have been clean, but unsatisfying. This way, he could demonstrate the futility of resistance while maintaining the Accord's restrictions. "Your orders?" "Begin with the water station. Captain Thekvar will lead 12 soldiers to secure it. Simultaneously, dispatch 6 to disable the communication tower. I want both operations complete within 10 minutes. "And if they resist?" Hesh turned from the windows, his eyes black, reflecting nothing. "Then we remind them why the hegemony rules with 100 worlds." The attack came exactly as Kaya predicted. 12 Votan soldiers advanced on the water station in a perfect wedge, weapons sweeping for threats. They found none. The building appeared deserted, its heavy doors standing open in invitation. Captain Thekvar, still burning from yesterday's humiliation in the council chamber, should have recognized the trap. But rage made him stupid, and pride made him blind. He ordered his squad forward. The first explosion took out their rear guard, a mining charge Hendricks had placed, triggered by pressure. 2 soldiers vanished in a cloud of dust and rubble. The rest scattered, seeking cover that didn't exist. The humans had spent the night removing it all, leaving the approach an open kill zone. Plasma bolts rained down from the water station's windows. Not military-grade weapons, but industrial tools, modified for violence. They couldn't penetrate Votan armor directly, but they didn't need to. Each shot aimed for joints, eye slits, the soft spots Kaya had taught them to find. Thekvar roared orders, trying to organize a response, but his soldiers were already breaking. They'd expected cowering humans begging for mercy. Instead, they faced coordinated resistance from an enemy that had studied them, learned their weaknesses, and lost its fear. At the communication tower, the smaller Votan force met similar reception. Tom Park had rigged the tower's support struts with cutting charges, not enough to topple it, but sufficient to rain metal shrapnel when detonated. 3 Votan fell immediately, armor shredded by improvised flechettes. The survivors called for reinforcement that wouldn't come. Hesh, monitoring from the Citadel, had committed his reserves nowhere, waiting to see how the humans' resistance evolved. In 12 minutes, it was over. 7 Votan dead, 8 wounded, 3 captured, something that had never happened in the occupation's history. The humans had lost 2 fighters at the water station, both volunteers who'd known the price. But more importantly, they'd won. For the first time in a generation, the humans of Falkstand had faced their oppressors and emerged victorious. The captured Votan soldiers knelt in the water station's main pump room, hands secured with their own restraints. Around them, Humans stood with weapons they'd never thought to carry before today. The air thrummed with possibility and barely controlled rage.
Kill them, someone suggested. Like they've killed us.
No. Kaya emerged from the shadows, still wearing the wraith frame. The sight of her made even the humans step back. We are better. Brahm, see to their wounds. Basic treatment, nothing more.
You're showing them mercy?
Hendrix had survived the fight, a plasma burn across his shoulder testament to his participation.
After everything they've done?
I'm showing them something they don't understand. She approached the largest prisoner, a sergeant by his markings. You're going to carry a message to Hesh. Tell him Kaya Falk requests parley. Neutral ground, the market square. 1 hour. The sergeant spat at her feet.
The commander treats with warriors, not terrorists.
Kaya moved so fast, the watching humans barely saw it. Her hands closed around the sergeant's throat, lifting him despite his greater mass. The wraith frame's servos whined with effort, but held. Terrorist? Her voice remained level, which made it worse. I was a soldier. Then I was a mother. Your people made me do this. She released him, letting him collapse, gasping. 1 hour. Tell him to come alone, as I will. Tell him it's time to discuss terms.
Terms?
The sergeant struggled to speak through his damaged throat.
You think you've won? We have ships, warriors, weapons that could boil the rock beneath this settlement.
Yes, Kaya agreed. And Earth has a fleet that could turn your homeworld into an asteroid field. The Vila Accord prevents that, as long as you don't use orbital bombardment on civilians. But here's what your commanders haven't told you. The treaty works both ways. The moment you fire from orbit, Earth's fleets will mobilize. Your hegemony might win, but at what cost? How many worlds will burn for this one? She crouched, bringing herself to eye level with the kneeling sergeant. Hesh understands this. That's why he'll come. Because he's smart enough to know when a war costs more than it wins. The market square had been cleared of yesterday's violence, but the stains remained. Darker patches on red stone where Votan blood had soaked too deep to wash away. Kaya stood in the center, having shed the wraith frame for simple work clothes. No weapons were visible, a gesture that fooled no one. Hesh arrived precisely on time, also alone as agreed. He moved with a predator's grace, each step calculated. When he stopped 10 meters from her, close enough to speak but far enough to react, she saw him catalog every detail. Her stance, her breathing, the micro-expressions that might telegraph violence.
Kaya Falk,
he said, her name carrying neither respect nor contempt, simply acknowledgement.
You killed my predecessor and maimed my soldiers.
Your soldier struck my child.
A disproportionate response.
From your perspective. And he tensed before recognizing it as conversational. From my perspective, my restraint was remarkable. I could have killed every Votan in the settlement. Instead, I made a point.
And now you've made another. 7 more dead. You're escalating toward a conclusion you cannot survive.
Am I? Kaya pulled out a datapad, one of the old models from before the occupation. Let me share some of these numbers with you, Commander. Falk's Stand has a human population of 8,000. Of those, 3,000 are adults, capable of fighting. After today, I'd estimate 90% are willing.
Farmers with mining lasers?
Farmers who now know where to aim them, who've tasted victory and found it preferable to submission. She gestured to the surrounding buildings, where faces watched from windows. You have, 200 soldiers on the ground? Even with reinforcements from orbit, you're looking at urban warfare against an entrenched population that knows every tunnel, every hiding spot, every weakness in your patrols. Hesh's tail swished once. Annoyance or interest, she couldn't tell.
We have superior firepower.
Which you can't use without destroying the infrastructure you're here to protect. Every processing plant you demolish, every mine you collapse reduces this world's value. And that's assuming you don't trigger the Accord's bombardment clause and bring Earth's fleet down on your heads.
You're proposing mutual destruction as a bargaining position?
I'm proposing a cost-benefit analysis. She pulled up a holographic projection from the pad. Casualty estimates, resource costs, projected outcomes. Best case scenario for you. 6 months of guerrilla warfare. 60% casualties, infrastructure devastated, and a planet that won't produce profitable yields for a decade. Worst case, you fire from orbit. Earth retaliates, and the hegemony loses 3 border systems before a new treaty's signed. Hesh studied the projections with those intelligent black eyes.
You've thought this through.
I've had time. She shut off the projection. But here's what I'm offering instead. You withdraw. Complete evacuation, no conditions. You report to your superiors that Falk Stand has depleted its accessible resources, which is technically true. The deep deposits require investment the hegemony won't make for a border world. You frame it as a strategic reallocation of assets.
And in return?
The killing stops. You leave with your reputation intact, the commander wise enough to recognize a losing proposition. Your wounded receive medical treatment. Your dead receive proper rights. She paused. And the hegemony learns that humans can be negotiated with when we're treated as equals.
You're asking me to abandon a 20-year occupation because you killed some of my soldiers?
I'm asking you to abandon a 20-year occupation because keeping it will cost you everything and gain you nothing. She met his gaze directly. You're not Dracker, Commander. You don't rule through pride. You rule through pragmatism. So be pragmatic. Hesh was silent for a long moment, his alien features unreadable. Around them, the settlement held its breath. Humans at windows, Votan monitors in the Citadel. Everyone waiting for violence or salvation.
You were military,
he said finally.
Earth forces. Special operations, judging by your methods.
Once.
Why didn't Earth fight harder for this world when we first arrived?
Kaya considered the question. Because humans are also pragmatic. Falk Stand wasn't worth the wider war. Until now.
What's changed?
Me. She said it simply, without bravado. I changed. And through me, them. She gestured to the watching faces. Your occupation worked when we believed resistance was futile. That belief died yesterday, with Dracker. Even if you kill me, it won't come back. These people have remembered they're human.
And humans are dangerous.
When our children are threatened, we're the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She took a step closer, and he didn't retreat. But we're also capable of forgiveness, Commander. Leave now, and this ends. Stay and find out why Earth's military uses soldiers like me when conventional forces fail. Hesh's tail swished again, this time in what she recognized as amusement.
You realize you're threatening me with yourself?
I'm threatening you with the idea of me, of what humanity becomes when pushed too far. Today, it's one former soldier with obsolete equipment. Tomorrow it might be 3,000 civilians who've learned they can win. Next year, when word spreads, it might be every human on every occupied world, all asking themselves why they accept oppression from a species that bleeds just like them.
A revolution?
Or an evolution. Your choice. He turned away, looking at the citadel that had been the seat of Votan power for 2 decades. When he turned back, his expression had shifted to something she couldn't read.
3 days, he said. We'll need 3 days to evacuate properly. No attacks on my forces during withdrawal.
Agreed, if there are no reprisals against civilians.
Agreed.
He started to leave, then paused.
The child, your daughter, is she well?
The question surprised her. She'll heal.
Good.
He continued walking, then stopped again.
You would have made a formidable Votan, Kaya Falk.
And you would have made a terrible human. Something that might have been a laugh clicked in his throat.
3 days. After that, Falkstan governs itself. Whatever happens next is your responsibility.
It always was. The evacuation proceeded efficiently. Votan troops loaded equipment, supplies, and 20 years of occupation into heavy lifters. They moved through the settlement like ghosts, no longer making eye contact with humans, but also no longer demanding submission. Galt found himself on final patrol, walking streets he'd viewed as conquered territory just days ago. Now they all felt foreign, dangerous, full of shadows that might hide molecular blades and desperate parents. At the water station, he saw human children playing where Votan soldiers had died. They ran through puddles of water mixed with dust, their laughter strange and wonderful and terrifying. One of them, a girl no older than 6, looked at him without fear. "Are you leaving?" she asked. He shouldn't answer. Fraternization with subjects was forbidden. But what was forbidden in a withdrawal?
Yes.
Good. She said it simply, without malice, the way she might comment on weather. My mom says we can have our house back now.
Your house?
The one you took, where your soldiers live. It was ours before. She tilted her head, studying him with that uniquely human curiosity. Will you come back?
No.
Good, she repeated, and then ran off to join her friends. Galt watched her go, understanding finally what Hesh had recognized. They'd never conquered Falk's Stand. They'd occupied it, controlled it, extracted from it. But conquest required breaking something in the conquered, a surrender of spirit that transformed resistance into acceptance. The breaking had never happened here. It had only been sleeping, waiting for someone like Kaya Falk to wake it up. On the second night of withdrawal, Hesh found Kaya at her workshop, preparing to dismantle the wraith frame.
That seems premature, he observed. Your struggles are hardly over.
She didn't stop working, removing the framed power cell. The struggle's different now. We need builders, not soldiers.
The Earth government won't simply hand you independence. You've been a territory for 50 years.
I know. She sealed the power cell in its containment unit. But that's a different kind of fight. One that requires different weapons.
Politics.
Politics, she agreed, with the same tone one might say root canal. Hesh moved closer, studying the frame's construction.
This technology is 15 years old, obsolete by current standards.
Still killed your warlord?
The technology didn't kill him. You did.
He touched the frame's arm, where microservos clustered like mechanical muscles.
Just as you killed the occupation, not through violence, but through its possibility.
Violence was necessary. Once.
To prove you could. After that, the threat sufficed.
He stepped back.
You understood that from the beginning. The calculation, the escalation, even this negotiation, all planned.
Not all, Kaya admitted. I didn't plan for you. Drakkar would have fought to the last soldier, destroyed the settlement rather than retreat. You're different.
I'm a survivor. As are you.
He moved toward the door, then stopped.
Your husband, the former governor, his death wasn't random.
Kaya's hand stilled on the frame. I know.
Drakkar ordered it. He thought removing the human leader would break your spirit.
Instead, it just broke our chains. She resumed working. Did you know when it happened?
I suspected. I didn't object.
He paused.
I should have. Martyrs are dangerous.
Yes, she agreed. They are. He left without another word. Through the window, she watched him walk back to the Citadel, this strange enemy who'd become something almost like understanding. Tomorrow he'd be gone. The Votan would be gone, and Falk's stand would face the harder challenge of freedom, building something from the ashes of oppression. But tonight, she had work to finish. The frame had one more service to perform. The final morning dawned clear and bright, both suns painting the settlement in gold and copper. Every human who could walk had gathered in the market square, the same space where Drakkar had died 3 days ago. The last Votan transport sat on the landing pad, engines cycling. Hesh stood at its ramp, his remaining soldiers already on board. He held a datapad, the official transfer of authority. Meaningless, but necessary. Brahm accepted it on behalf of the settlement, his sheriff's badge newly polished for the occasion.
By the authority vested in me by absolutely nobody, I accept control of Falk's stand. The hegemony recognizes the transfer.
Hesh's tone remained formal, but his black eyes held something like respect.
We withdraw all claims to this system.
Good riddance, someone called from the crowd, but without real venom. The rage had burned out, leaving only exhaustion and possibility. The transport lifted, and within minutes, the Votan were gone. Their ships hung in orbit just long enough to confirm departure vectors, then vanished into hyperspace. The crowd stood in stunned silence, as if sound might bring them back. Then Rhea tugged on Kaya's hand. Mom, does this mean we can have salsa chips whenever we want now? The laughter started small, with Kaya, then spread through the crowd like wildfire. Soon the entire square rang with it, the sound of people remembering joy. Yes, baby, Kaya said, lifting her daughter onto her shoulders. Salsa chips whenever you want. Even for breakfast? let's not get crazy. More laughter. Then music, as someone brought out an instrument that had been hidden for 20 years. Others began to dance, awkward and unpracticed, but genuine. The market stalls opened, vendors giving away food that had been hoarded against siege. Brahm found Kaya at the edge of the celebration, watching it all with careful eyes. "Still on guard?" he asked. "Habit." "It's over, Kaya. We won." "We survived," she corrected. "Winning comes next. Rebuilding, governing ourselves, convincing Earth we deserve independence. The hard part's just starting." "Then why are you smiling?" She realized. For the first time in 3 days, maybe 3 years, she was actually smiling. "Because my daughter's safe. Because these people are free. Because sometimes that's enough." Brahm nodded, understanding. They stood together, watching humanity rediscover itself in the shadow of evacuation. Children who'd hidden from Votan patrols now ran screaming through the square. Adults who'd kept their heads down for decades stood straight, eyes bright with tears and possibility. "Your husband would be proud," Brahm said softly. "He would." She touched the wedding ring she still wore. "He always said violence was the failure of diplomacy. But sometimes diplomacy needs violence to clear its throat." The celebration continued around them, humanity riding its first free day in 20 years. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Food distribution without Votan oversight, power generation, water rights, the thousand small tyrannies of self-governance. But today was for joy. For remembering what they'd almost lost. For honoring what they'd paid to keep it. In the crowd, Kaya spotted the young ones who'd fought at the water station, their plasma burns still healing. They'd aged years in 3 days. Children no longer. She'd done that to them, given them the terrible gift of violence, the knowledge that they could kill and survive killing. Later, she'd talk to them, share what she'd learned about carrying that weight, about finding peace after war. But not today. Today, Ria ran back to her, face bright with uncomplicated happiness, grabbing her hand to pull her to the dancing crowd. "Come on, Mom! They're teaching us the old Earth dances!" Kaya let herself be pulled, leaving behind the soldier, the killer, the woman who'd hung a warlord's head in his own hall. Today, she was just a mother whose daughter was safe, whose people were free, whose world was possible again. The suns climbed higher, warming the red stone of the square where Votan blood no longer stained the ground. Music echoed off buildings that belonged to humans again. And in the center of it all, Kaya Falk danced with her daughter, her neighbors, her species, rediscovering what it meant to be unafraid.